All right, now let's implement a new endpoint to get a single course from the server. So first of all, let's change this back to courses and add the ID parameter here. Okay, now on the top, let's define an array called courses. So constant courses, we set this to an array. And in this array, we're going to have 3 course objects. So each object should have a couple of properties, ID and name. And of course we can have more, but for simplicity, I'm just going to stick to 2 properties here. Okay, now let's duplicate this line and change the IDs as well as the name, 2 and 3. So we have 2 endpoints, one to get all the courses and the other to get a single course, right? In the first one, we're going to return our courses array, okay? Now in the second one, we should write some logic to look for the course with the given ID. So let me delete this first. We're going to call courses.find. This is a method that is available on every array in JavaScript. As an argument to this method, we need to pass a function. This function will be used to find a course that matches a given criteria. So we use the arrow function syntax, C goes to, and here we write some logic that returns a Boolean value. This Boolean value determines if this course is the one we're looking for or not. So c.id should equal request.params.id. However, this request.params.id returns a string. So in order for this comparison to work properly, we need to parse this string into an integer. So we call parseInt, which is one of the global functions available in JavaScript, and then get the result and store it in a constant called course. Now you might be asking why I didn't use var here. Well, that would be perfectly fine, and that's how most JavaScript code out there is written. But going forward, it's best to drop var and either use let or const. We use let if you want to define a variable that we can reset later, and we use const if you want to define a constant. In this case, I don't want to reset the course later in this function. But again, that's perfectly fine to use let here as well. It's just personal preference. So we get the course object. Now, if this course doesn't have a value, in other words, if we don't find a course with the given ID, by convention, we should return a response with the HTTP status code of 404. That means object not found. So this is one of the conventions of RESTful APIs. If the client asks for a resource, but that resource does not exist on the server, we should return a response with the status code of 404. So here we call response.status 404, and optionally we can send a message to the client as well. So send the course with the given ID was not found. Okay, now otherwise, if we do have a course with that ID, we're simply going to return that to the client. So response.send course. Now let's test this. So back in the browser, let's head over to /API/courses/1. So we have a course with the ID 1, and that's why we get this JSON object in the response. However, if I change this to 10, we get this message, the course with the given ID was not found. And to ensure that the status code of this response is 404, we can open up Chrome Developer Tool. So right click here, go to inspect, and then on the network tab, make sure you don't have a filter here, so select all, and then refresh the page by pressing Ctrl-R on Windows or Command-R on Mac. So here's a request that we sent to the server. You can see the status is 404, which means not found.